want to thank everybody for being on the call. My name is Chris Lester. I'll be your host today. For those of you that have not been on this call before, I am now on 187 days of quarantine. If you're new to this call, typically I do these calls every week. We've been doing them the last 6 months on different topics as they relate to finances. So this week's topic is on annuity. We want to just make them a little bit easier to understand. And we find that this is an area that can be often misunderstood, and also people don't quite often know what they have. There's a lot of different varying opinions. So what we wanted to do is, on a very high level, help you to be able to differentiate the different types of annuities and what they can actually do for you. This week's call, understanding what you have, if you have an annuity, help you to understand it, versus what you may want. Is an annuity something that you actually want and or need, versus what you hear on the radio, right? A lot of you have probably heard the radio commercials or TV commercials. Ken Fisher comes to mind. I hate annuities and you should too, right? So why is he saying that? Is it just his opinion? What is he talking about? Should we be in the market all the time? Because that's the alternative. So first we have to understand, what is an annuity? An annuity is a contract between you and an insurance company in which you make a lump sum payment or a series of payments. In a return, you're going to receive regular disbursements. Either they can begin immediately or some point in the future. An annuity is almost like Social Security, or almost like a pension, right? A personal pension. We'll look at how those work a little bit more. So I like this graph because I think it's clean. And on the left side of the page, you're going to see the word immediate annuity at the top. So what does that mean? I have a client right now that is getting ready to retire a company. He just reached out to us, and his company is looking like they're not going to be able to meet their pension obligations. So the company is saying, hey, if you take the pension election, right, even though a lot of it's insured by the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corp, right, PBGC, it may not be able to meet its contractual obligations, right? So that's the risk with a corporate pension, right? So what we're going to look at is trading that asset with an insurance company. You give up complete control. Now, there's two ways to do that. One is if I need money right now. That's called a SPIA or a MIGA, right? A single premium immediate annuity, or a multi-year guaranteed annuity where we want income, right? We need income now. Now, if you're an individual, like a lady that I'm dealing with in Arizona right now, she's single, has no spouse. So a single life would pay the most money if she traded that asset with the insurance company. But keep in mind, if you do that, so let's say that you turn around and you had, $300,000 or $500,000, and you traded that asset with the insurance company. You said, here you go, Mr. and Mrs. Insurance Company, here's $500,000, and I want you to, starting based on my age, I want you to give me a paycheck for the rest of my life, regardless of how long I live. Now, if you receive one paycheck, depending on the type of annuity election that you make, you could end up on the wrong side of the bet. You could end up, let's say you got $1,000 the first month, second month, third month, and then you had a bad day and you met your maker. If that happened, the company would keep the other $497,000 in that example. So if you have a spouse, you can do that on a joint life. So instead of taking $1,000 a month, maybe what you do is you say, I want $750 or $800 while I'm alive, but if I pass, my spouse will either get 100% of that number or some lower amount, maybe 75 or 50%. And there's all different variables of that. Or maybe you say, hey, I definitely want to make no ifs, ands, or buts. I know I'm single, but I have kids and I want to pass something on to them if I should pass away prematurely. And I think death is always premature. So if you turn around and you said you had $500,000, but you could do what they call a 10-year certain, or a 15-year certain, or a 20-year certain. And it says that regardless of whether you're here or not, somebody is going to get the remaining balance. So that's an immediate annuity. And an immediate annuity has its place. But typically, a lot of folks that I've dealt with over almost 30 years in the business don't want to give up complete unilateral control. We don't know what the future holds. We might change our mind. Things happen. I might need a little bit more liquidity. I don't know. And that's where the right side of the slides talks about deferred annuities. And what that says is you could still put in a lump sum, but we're not going to turn on the income today. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I'll ever trade the asset with the insurance company because a lot of them have a rider on there called a guaranteed lifetime benefit withdrawal or some version of those letters to give you an income as a rider. Sometimes that income has a cost on the rider, sometimes it doesn't. So there are literally thousands of annuity designs out there, annuity companies, different products, different insurance companies. So with that, I always caution that what you hear somebody talking about, whether it be good or bad, may not be good or bad. It's just a tool. But is it the correct tool for you? So in my example, the deferred annuity, you'll notice that underneath that we have two words, variable and fixed. And the point I'm trying to make here is of the different types of products, financial products you can buy that are variable. Could be a variable mortgage. I don't know if any of you on this call have ever had a variable mortgage, but a lot of them that I've seen in my career have blown up or not worked out as promised because at some point in the future, whether it be 7 years or 10 years, that happens, and next thing you know, you owe a much larger sum in the future. So having a variable in an equation can cause a little bit of stress and uncertainty. And then you have variable life insurance. So variable life insurance, not only do you have all the expenses on mortality and insurance costs, but then you have the separate sub-accounts. So they can be very expensive. And then you have variable annuities. If you see the word variable, let's say you get off this call and you go and Google annuities, and you see the word variable in the sentence, I don't want you to walk. Now, this is my opinion. I don't want you to walk. I want you to run. And you're going to see here in a second why. But when you hear Ken Fisher talking about I hate annuities, or Susie Orman talk about I hate annuities, right? Dave Ramsey, I hate annuities. These are the types of annuities that they're typically referring to. So I put a big X here. But then there are good annuities that I feel can do two things. They can help us to de-risk our portfolios and give us predictability into the future and be what I call a bond alternative in our overall financial planning strategy. So I'll give all of these positive check marks. So you're going to see here, this is something called an annuity stress test. And I'm going to put this offer out there to everybody on the call or that watches this video in the future. If you have a variable annuity and you'd like a second opinion, allow us to do an annuity stress test. I did this annuity stress test for this lady. This lady is 72 years old. When I went and pulled a prospectus on this annuity's prospectus was 682 pages. When you need 682 pages to explain what something costs, chances are it's too expensive. But in this example, you'll see in the upper column, and I know it's a little hard to see, but you'll see that they have mortality and expense costs and administration for a total of 1.65. That's not horrible. Oh, but there's some riders on there. That income rider, there is 1.5%. All right, so now we're up about 3%, 3.15. And then the separate sub-accounts, by the time they're all done, this annuity was at 4.61%. For every $1 million that a client has in a product like this, they are paying $46,000, $40,000 a year. Let's just call it $40,000 a year. So you gotta outperform 4% just to get to the word even. This is why a lot of negative press. No, not every annuity that's like this needs to be replaced. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes they have roll-ups and guaranteed amounts where it makes sense to hold on to. But quite often, we find that it's not in the client's best interest because any of the future growth that's being shown in these is typically being funded by the client's own money going forward. So keep that in mind. So that's 4.61%. I don't know about you, but to me, that's a lot of money. It was costing this woman $18,000 a year. And so you just take the next 10 years, and she's going to pay in excess of 150 grand, 180 grand of her own money. So the market would have to do phenomenally well to offset those costs. So now that we've talked about what types of annuities not to really consider, let's talk about what an annuity is, because there's a lot of good features here. It is the only product, let me repeat that, the only product in the world that I know that can give you an income for life. Guaranteed, contractual. Give you reasonable rates of return. We don't need to swing for the fences because you're going to see something here. There's something called mortality credits or longevity credits that we can use, that the insurance company can use to make sure that you're getting money in the future. A lot of them have long-term care features. So a lot of folks on the call will say, hey, I don't have long-term care because it's so expensive. This can be another way to have that area of your portfolio shored up. And then this is the only product that can defend against longevity risk. So there's three parts of an income in retirement that we should be looking at when I'm working and building out a retirement plan. Social Security, what are we getting from the government? Pensions, if we're lucky to have gotten one of those in our working career, I call those unicorns, right? They're very rare. And an annuity, if you can trade an asset, you can still have some money in the market, but let's have a portion of our money that's guaranteed not to go backwards. All right. So longevity risk is hands down the number one risk in retirement. Why? Because it's not just a risk, it's a risk multiplier of the other risks. The longer we live, the more likely that over our lifespan, the market's going to correct multiple times. Withdrawal rate risk, we've talked about this in the past, right? Pulling too much out of the 4% rule, which we've debunked in the past. Sequence of return risk, I've done a couple videos in sessions on that, right? Depending on what year you retire, if you tell me what's going to happen in the market in the next 5 years, I can tell you if it's the right year to retire. So if you retire when the market's on its way down, it can do irreversible damage. Long-term care, right? So this is one of the greatest risks that most retirees will face in their 80s and 90s as we're living longer and medical costs are increasing. And then mortality risk, death, right? That's, like I said, it's always premature. And inflation risk. This hasn't reared its head lately, but if anybody on this call has lived through the late 70s or early 80s and they've seen double-digit inflation rates, 10%, 12%, 14%. I think my parents got their house in Edison, their mortgage was 14%. Do we think that interest rates are going to stay this low forever? No. If interest rates start to creep up again, bonds hate that. We've talked about that. Here's what I know. I know a gallon of milk today is going to cost more in the future than it does today at some point in time. Same with a gallon of gas. Same with the loaf of bread. That's inflation. We got to make sure that whatever we're earning is outpacing or at least keeping pace with inflation. So how do you take longevity risk off the table? Well, traditional investments such as managed money or real estate or CDs, they cannot do it. A lifetime income annuity or a deferred income annuity or an income withdrawal benefit rider from a fixed or variable annuity, and I take that word variable because, again, they offer them, but they're expensive to own, but they can do it. An insurance company is in the business of mitigating risk. Somebody says, what's an annuity? I'll say, well, let me give you the Reader's Digest version. You know what life insurance is? And they say, yeah. I said, life insurance pays if you die. Okay, well, what's an annuity? An annuity pays if you live. You know, with medical advancement, we have more centurions living today. I think we're in excess of 50,000 people that are over age 100 right now. It is estimated by the year 2050 that number is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million people. We're living longer. Now, that was pre-COVID that those studies were done, but just think about it. Once we find a vaccine for that and we're living longer, suppose we live, oh, it's hard to imagine. Hey, if I make it to 100, if I make it to 105, if I make it to 110, I mean, people used to say, if I make it to 60, I'll consider myself to have won the race. We're living longer, we're living healthier, we're eating better, all these things. So longevity is a very real possibility. And if all these other factors are going on, longevity can actually play and should be first and foremost of our planning strategies. So how do annuities do this? Longevity credits. Let's say that you had 5 90-year-old women take a vacation together every year. And at the beginning of the year, the women put $100 in the box and they collect it as $500. And they go on vacation. And then next year they come back to do it again. But unfortunately, one of those ladies died. And they split the money in the box. Now each of them have $125. That's a 25% rate of return. But here's the question. How much was invested in the market? Zero. That's longevity credits. What interest rate did they earn? Zero. Because it's not in the market. But their overall, because the mortality credits, was able to give them a rate of return on their money. So they decide to let it ride. And the next year, one more lady passes away. And now the three ladies take their 500 and they each get 167. And that's a 67% return. All this is based on longevity credits. That's the simplest and easiest way that I know how to explain. Because people will quite often walk, how can the insurance companies do that? This is how. Because it's the pooling process. Same thing with life insurance. They are now doing on making sure that people have enough income for life. So here are three annuity examples, three different carriers that I've used over my career. This company here is called American Equity. What I find interesting, Ken Fisher will say, I hate annuities and you should too, but he used to be a significant stockholder in this company. But this just shows, I used to say this, the red line, the green line, or the blue line, which one you want. Now there's actually 4 lines here now. The red line used to not be so pretty in 2000, 2008, and only in the last 3 years has the S&P outperformed the other investments. But I think I've said in the past that, when I go to Disney World or Great Adventure anymore, and they have all the roller coasters, I don't need to do that anymore. I've already done that. I'm very content taking that tram or the monorail around the park. And that's signified by these other 3 colors, right? So you have a participation rate of 20%, so that's the green line. A fixed strategy, if you just took the steady Eddie, this is like a CD in an annuity company where you don't have to pay interest until you ever take the money out. So over a period of time, that's actually done second best. Just taking that old tortoise swims the race approach. And then if you have an index annuity with a cap, just a cap strategy, right? That those areas are options. Now, right now, it doesn't look, in this picture, doesn't look ideal. But when you add a bonus product to these numbers, right? So this is Athene. Athene offers a 20% bonus. So in this example, $300,000 went in. Well, that's 20%. It's $360,000. And you'll see here that in that benefit base, that this is what the income is based on. Well, this is for a 60-year-old male, and they don't need the money right now. Well, by the time they might need the money, whenever they decide to take it out, this is what their benefit income will be based off of. And depending on their age, it's a percentage of. This is why did they do that? Because A, they're taking your money and they're investing in their bond portfolios, and they have the guarantees now in a contract to make sure that regardless of when you need the money, that they're going to pay you an income stream for life. But notice that the interest rates here, there's nothing phenomenal, 2.5 1 year, 3.3, 1.4, but because of one of their indexing strategies, they got some pop here, 15%, then 1%. But even in a year where they got 0%, there was no downward pressure, there's no loss in this annuity because there was no fees in the annuity. And then this is the last annuity that just came out recently. This is Allianz. I've been offering Allianz for years. Allianz had a product for years called the 222. Well, they just come out with a product called the ABC. Allianz is the only company that I know of in my career that offers not only the bonus on the product, but they give an increasing income in retirement. So you'll see that first year, right? If you were to turn on the income, and I'll back up here, they turned on income in the first year at age 66, 67. So they put in their $300,000. They said, hey, I need some money. But once they pull out that $17,164, that is now guaranteed for life. Cannot lose it, cannot go backwards. But notice that they got an interest rate credit, and now they went to 17, and then to 19, and then to 20, then to 21, then to 22. What I love about Allianz's product is it's not only guaranteed for the person, for the annuitant, for the person, for the contract holder, but for their spouse. So if we were to do this in an IRA, you're able to build an income stream even if the account runs out of money, right? So even you'll look here, if I come back here and I say, look, down here, this client was at 41,000 and the accounts were at 0. What this says, at 82 years old, not only are they going to get guaranteed $41,000, they could have another 20 years on this planet. But not only would they get it, but their spouse would get it. And that, to me, in this example, up to age 90, their original $300,000 paid out $824. And this is how you offset inflation. So at the end of the day, right, when we're looking at this, and then this is the last thing, see that $32,000? This contract here and the Athene that I showed you before have a doubler should you go into a long-term care facility, a nursing home, and need long-term care. If you can't perform 2 out of 6 ADLs, that they will take this $32,000 and double it to $64,000 for 5 years, right? And then it will go back to the $32,000 and the increasing payout from there. So it's just another way to reduce some risk, long-term care risk that we were talking about as well. So I'm at the end of my slides. Here's what I would leave you with. I just, the market today, it's off its rallies, right? So we had a pretty steep decline. Tomorrow we're going to have the jobs report to bounce out. I've been cautioning against putting too much weight into all-time highs because the S&P and the Dow aren't necessarily indicative of the entire market. You have to look at a broad spectrum of indices to be able to sort of get a pulse of what the economy is doing worldwide and where to have your money. That being said, we've talked about having money in bond portfolios, right? So whether it be muni bonds or high yield bonds or international bonds, any of these types of bond classes, bonds don't like rising interest rates. And flight to safety, quite often we've seen, the treasuries of late, people have been flying to the treasuries, getting no yield. So another way to start to think about it is you can start to carve out a portion of your retirement plan, even if you're still working right now, take some risk off the table and put a bond alternative in place, something like one of these bonus or increasing income annuities in place. So I just wanted to make sure that you're understanding what you may have versus what you may want versus what you may hear. Folks, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to hop on and listen to our chat with Chris weekly. Next week, we'll see you at the same time. And again, the advisor that maybe invited you here, if you have questions about this or want to see what an annuity like this might look like for you, circle back with them. And they'll be happy to run you an illustration. But again, we're always available. My email address you see there, chris@professionalplanningservices.com. Folks, have a wonderful day. I look forward to hearing from you and stay safe out there. God bless.